Pokemon Champions comes out next week, but we already know some nerfs and buffs to a lot of Mega Pokemon. Gengar no longer has access to Encore, which is a huge nerf to Mega Gengar, because the combination of Encore plus Shadow Tag would have been incredibly deadly. The timing of Mega Evolution has been changed completely, as it now happens before the opponent switches. Meaning a Pokemon like Mega Metagross will no longer benefit from Clear Body prior to Mega Evolution, as it Mega Evolves and then the opponent switches in their Intimidate Pokemon, giving it -1 attack. We also have some nerfs for moves like Protect, and the confirmed abilities of Mega Froslass, which is Snow Warning, and Mega Dragonite, which is Multiscale. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. We have a lot to talk about today. As always, let me know your thoughts down below, and if you do enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe. I'm very excited for Pokemon Champions coming out next week. We do have a little bar on the side, a progress bar, so you can kind of keep up with what we're going to be talking about, as I'll be jumping around in topics. I also want to talk about, obviously, Mega Dragonite, Mega Froslass. We have their confirmed abilities, what I think about them, and, of course, the nerfs and buffs. So the first nerf, I mentioned it in the intro, is that Mega Gengar no longer has Encore. Now, Mega Gengar technically never had Encore, okay? Gengar got Encore in Generation 8. Mega Pokemon were not in Generation 8. However, if you play National Dex, Ubers / anything goes, you did have access to Encore. Now, Encore would have been completely broken in VGC on Mega Gengar. For example, you switching your Mega Gengar with Shadow Tag on your opponent going for Fake Out or your opponent going for Protect. Now, they cannot switch unless they're a Ghost type, and you can go for Encore on them. They are locked into Fake Out, they are locked into Protect, and of course, this is more of a nerf when it comes to VGC. It did also apply to singles, but Mega Gengar would have been banned anyway. But it still also would have been crazy if you bring it in like on a Recover, or a Roost from Ho-Oh, or a Stealth Rock from Groudon, or a Calm Mind from Arceus, just locking them into that, and they're stuck with Shadow Tag. So it does have some, you know, applicable situations for singles, but imagine just being able to shut down something in doubles VGC, and then you have this base 170 special attack stat where all you had to go for after that was just Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, and then Protect, and you were just going to be perfect. You could shut down literally anything. It would actually be a 50-50 to go for Protect. It would actually be a 50-50 to ever go for Fake Out, and you and your opponent would have to play all these mind games prior. But Mega Gengar, the Pokemon Shadow Tag in this case will always come out on top, because not even if it gets it wrong, it has its high speed tier, and it's not like it's that frail as well. So a pretty big nerf for Mega Gengar before even it happens. And I for one, think it's actually a good nerf, because I think it would be this mon's going to be very good in Champions, in my opinion. In VGC, it's always been very good. And I am grateful that you don't have to deal with Encore. Now, one of the biggest changes, as I mentioned in the intro, is the change to the turn order. I think they wanted to make Mega Evolution do the same thing as Terastallization, because when you switch out, Terastallization always happened first anyway, and now Mega Evolution does this. Previously, the Pokemon would switch, and then Mega Evolution would happen. This is, of course, in a doubles or even a singles setting. So this is a pretty big nerf for Zard Y. I'll show you an example right now. Currently, this is how turn order goes. You lead off with Charizard, who's Mega Charizard Y. Your opponent has Caterpie. Your opponent switches first into Pelipper, and then you Mega Evolve. You get up the Sun, and you hit them with a strong Weather Ball, Flamethrower, whatever it is. When it comes to VGC, you would go for Heat Waves, and you get to hit them with a Sun boosted attack. But that is no longer going to be the case, as now the Mega Evolution will happen before the switch, which means that Pelipper indirectly has a buff, and non-Mega Weather Setters indirectly have buffs, because they can come in and cancel out the weather that is set automatically. This is huge for rain teams in both singles and VGC. I don't have to worry about those boosted heat waves on your partner Pokemon next to Pelipper, or even Pelipper taking it. And same thing, honestly, for rain in singles. Zard Y was a menace, because if you go hard, Pelipper, you take so much. Well, you take so much regardless, unless you're special defensive, but obviously a sun boosted move is doing more than one nerfed by the rain. So a pretty big nerf for Zard Y, and just a huge change in general. I do want to note that there may be some conflicting information about this due to YoKevDov's recent video, though this is only the demo of Pokemon Champions, and the version that everybody else played might have been a little different. So a paralyzed Trevenant outsped Mega Scizor while switching. People are saying this might have to do with Naturcure activating and then the Trevenant having max speed while the Mega Scizor didn't. So does this mean the game registers Naturcure as activating as you click the move to switch out, even though it's not going to be shown until you do switch out? This could change Pokemon forever if both switching and Mega Evolving are in the same speed bracket. But what do you think? Other Pokemon that this hurts is that Kangaskhan no longer has Scrappy. So the Intimidates from Pokemon, I'm going to keep using Incineroar because for VGC, that's a big one. I guess Landorus is also another one. Scrappy would protect you previously if you switched in, and now it doesn't, so it no longer has that prior to protect itself from that. Mega Metagross no longer has it with the clear body prior. And I mean, there'll be some mind games when you play singles. There's a lot of not mega evolving with your Pokemon to keep your clear body. It might be a little bit tougher in doubles because there are two Pokemon attacking into you, and Mega Metagross versus Metagross's speed buff and speed, attack, and defenses. There's a huge difference when it comes to it. So big Mega Metagross nerf. Same thing with Manectric and Intimidate, right? You get the Intimidate on the Pokemon that's already on, but if they're switching out, right, the next Pokemon gets to come in relatively safely. Of course, not all Pokemon have been nerfed. Mega Lopunny gets a nice indirect buff because it immediately has Scrappy, so if you switch in your Intimidate Pokemon, let's say Incineroar, that's not going to get -1 on Mega Lopunny due to it Mega Evolving immediately. If you can think of any other Mons that were buffed or nerfed, feel free to let me know down below. Speaking of nerfing, Incineroar no longer has access to Knockoff. Now, obviously, Knockoff is its best tool when it comes to VGC, and it was good in singles too, but in a lower tier. But Knockoff not being on Incineroar means you can't get rid of those precious berries, those precious assault vests on opposing Incineroar. It was its greatest way of making progress without having any investment at all. I do want to note that I believe in Generation 8, the beginning of it, we did have Incineroar without Knockoff, and then later they ended up giving it Knockoff. So everything here that happens, like Mega Gengar not having Encore, though I think that one might stay, and Incineroar not having Knockoff may end up being changed later on in the game. The big thing about Champions being the hub for Pokemon versus something like Scarlet and Violet or Generation 10 is that now they have the ability to do these changes before we get DLCs or next generation. Previously, if you wanted to see a Mon nerfed or buffed, you had to wait to a whole new game to come out or a whole new version of the game to come out to happen. Now that this is kind of the hub for VGC, we really don't have to wait. There's nothing really stopping that unless they want to. One of the biggest nerfs that we see coming with Pokemon Champions is the nerf of PP. Now, I have these two Pokemon because they are particularly... They use Protect in singles, right? So Protect has been nerfed to 8 PP, which is kind of wild, but it's not just Protect. And I'll just say it real quick. Basically, moves that had, and shout out to Wolfie Glick and all the other people who were invited to play Champions early and found this out, but moves that have 16 PP are now capped at 12. So instead of having 16 Earthquakes with my Gliscor, I now have access to 12. And moves that had 24 now have 16, which is a pretty big nerf for almost everybody. Right? You can no longer, and especially the Protect one. Protect got nerfed from 16 to 8. Now you can only get 8 Protects. This is huge for Alomola because you have 16 wishes next to 8 Protects. You can't wish Protect beat everybody like that. You still have Regenerator and stuff like that, but you still can't do that. This is huge for SD Gliscor and regular Gliscor because you definitely go for more than 8 Protects with this. When it comes to VGC, Protect is obviously the most important move in the game. If you're playing a playstyle like Wolf, with Perish Trap, you are going for more than 8 Protects usually with your Pokemon. And in singles with Gliscor and Alomola, you are almost always going for more than 8 Protects. Gliscor no longer has access to Roost. We don't know if it will in Pokemon Champions, and this is its only form of recovery. Even in the National Dex tier, where Gliscor does have access to Roost, it's still running Protect because Protect is broken due to Poison Heal, Toxic Orb recovery. So this is a huge nerf, and honestly, it's pretty wild because the game is going to change completely when it comes to VGC. It'll probably be a little bit more fast-paced because... which I don't know if that's a great thing or not. You let me know down below what you think about this. It'll probably be a little bit more fast-paced because a lot of moves are just less PP. And I don't know why they did this. And it's not like, oh, maybe they just didn't PP max them in it. No, we saw moves like Recover still have 8. We saw Sewer Power still have 8. We saw Sucker Punch still have 8. So this is just a really big change, and I think these two Pokemon in particular, when it comes to singles, are the most nerfed, at least when it comes to Protect. I think every Pokemon, when it comes to Earthquake only having 12 PP. It's pressure. I'm going to tell you straight up, my favorite Pokemon is about to be back on the rise. The Sub-Combine Suicune set will take every move from you way quick. Like before, I only got to take 6 Earthquakes from Gliscor instead of 8. And of course, Corviknight is obviously the big one as well. But even Spidef Corviknight, like just taking on Pokemon like Golden Go, if it's running like Covert Cloak so it can't get Spidef dropped, or Mirror Armor, but you need the pressure or anything like that. That's a really, really big change. That's a core change when it comes to Pokemon. So what are your thoughts on that? I think for VGC, that's one of the wildest, if not the wildest changes next to Mega Evolution. I personally think it's cool if you don't like, you know, fighting Alomola, and if you hate Gliscor. And these are some of the most annoying Pokemon to deal with. I'll throw another one up here just so you guys can see, but like Garganical going for Salt Cure plus Protect just got so much worse. I'm already limited. Imagine this Pokemon with 16 PP recovered. These are both 8 now. This mon will not be unkillable. It will not be. I've 1v6 teams with this Pokemon just simply because I had 16 protects between my recovers. Now you'll only have 8, so you won't be able to do that as much. Of course, this is only on a Pokemon Champions meta. This doesn't affect Scarlet and Violet OU. But what Pokemon in particular you guys think is going to get way easier to deal with? I think that the bulkier mons, again, that rely on this move kind of get way, way worse. And of course, now we know the confirmed abilities of both Mega Froslass and Mega Dragonite. So Mega Froslass has access to Snow Warning. This is basically what we thought it would get in the Legends ZA OU Pet mod. This is exactly what it had, and this is what we've been running for a while. This is a great set for Froslass. This is a great tool for Froslass kit. First off, it is super fast, 372 speed. The previous mon that is very good in VGC is Alolan Ninetales. And Alolan Ninetales would set up Veil, Aurora Veil, excuse me. It would also go for Icy Wind, as Encore, but Froslass can do the same thing. Of course, that doesn't mean Alolan Ninetales is out of a job, because this costs your Mega versus Alolan Ninetales being able to be paired next to a Mega Evolution and being really good for it. But this gives you Aurora Veil, which is amazing for your team, summoning that, you know, that Light Screen plus Reflect in one. But the big one is also those 140, excuse me, base power Blizzards, 100% accurate. This is amazing for Froslass. And Blizzard plus Shadow Ball, beautiful damage. I do want to say that in Pokemon Legends ZA, and we don't know if this will happen in Pokemon Champions, but in Pokemon Legends ZA, Froslass does have access to Nasty Plot. This is a really big one because the Ice-type defense boost from Snow means that Froslass goes from this really meager base 70 defense to an actual respectable defense stat, making it really tough to take down. It has a really high speed tier over very common Pokemon when it comes to the OU tier, like Ogerpon and Pokemon like Latios, but also being faster than Pokemon like Cinderace and actually threatening them with a 2-shot from Shadow Ball. And just a damage calc in front of you, it's also naturally bulky enough because of the Snow Ice-type defense boost to even live an Adamant Sucker Punch from King Gambit. This could be useful if you're trying to get away with something like Will-O-Wisp. Now, I don't know if this Pokemon is going to have Nasty Plot again. If it does, I think this is great. This is a very threatening sweeper. Blizzard hits incredibly hard, and just being able to go for Blizzard plus Shadow Ball plus Thunderbolt just basically hits everything for neutral or super effective damage. It also functions as a pretty good spin blocker, not really having to worry about Headlong Rush or Knockoff from Great Tusk, because even though Knockoff is super effective and Headlong Rush hits really hard, it's not going to be able to knock it out due to that Ice-type defense boost. So it can come in and it can do fun things like Pain Split as well if it really wants to when it comes to the OU tier, healing itself, or it can sub Nasty Plot in front of Pokemon like Blissey that are not running Calm Mind and be able to set up, avoiding moves like Thunder Wave. So I think this is a really big buff for Mega Froslass. I like it a lot. I don't know if it'll be, you know, top tier OU. Obviously, this Pokemon, Alolan Ninetales can run, you know, Light Clay, right? So it'll have multiple moves. But when it comes to VGC, you have this strong, faster than Mega Metagross, faster than Mega Kangaskhan Pokemon speed tying with Mega Salamence, but also naturally living one hit from Mega Salamence because of your Ice-type defense boost, and then threatening with very strong Blizzards, something that Alolan Ninetales wasn't really doing. So I think this is a really nice buff for Froslass, and I think this is a really nice ability for Mega Froslass. And of course, if it does have Nasty Plot, I think it has a lot of potential even in the OU tier. But for Mega Dragonite, we have Multi-Scale. Now, Multi-Scale is a great ability on regular Dragonite who can function with heavy-duty boots, not having to worry about Stealth Rock. Of course, this only really applies to singles. When it comes to VGC, there are teams that do run Stealth Rock with Ting Lu and Toxus by Wigglemore. Not that Dragonite really has to worry about that, but the reason Multiscale is really good on Dragonite is because that Maw is always coming in at full HP, and it always has a great way to set up. Now, when it comes to VGC, this is pretty cool because what you can do is you can run Inner Focus first, not having to worry about Intimidate, and then you can Mega Evolve later while being at full and allowing you to set up or set up a Tailwind or do whatever damage you really want to do. I will also note that obviously Mega Dragonite has less attack than regular Dragonite by 10, but of course it has that added special attack, that speed, and I really did want this Mon to have like No Guard or Drizzle or Gale Wings or anything like that. I do think Multiscale will be fine when it comes to VGC. Again, Dragonite is incredibly bulky, going to be really, really difficult to take down. And I do think that even Dragon Dance sets might even have more opportunities to do it when it comes to this. You're just going to have to pair it with Pokemon like Cinderace and Pokemon like Hatterene and Pokemon like Great Tusk if they are even still in singles. When it comes to Great Tusk, obviously Champions OU, I doubt we have any of the Paradox Pokemon. I think that the way it's going to work is it's going to be focused on the Megas, and then, you know, in time, and I don't know any inside information. I was not invited to, to play Champions. I play Showdown. They do know me, but I play Showdown. So I think Multiscale has potential for the fast roost. That base 100 speed is really nice. Like, you're faster than Kyurem, so you actually can roost before Kyurem goes for that strong Ice Beam into you, and you can actually live it because it'll only be 2 times effective. Or even less, because you'll lose the flying type when roosting, and then your Dragon, and then your Multiscale, so you'll be okay because of that Multiscale. And then you can throw off, strong Hurricanes and stuff like this. But I think this is just more of, Dragonite is strong and it's fast, so it can get off strong Hurricanes, Fire Blasts, Thunderbolts, Ice Beams, whatever you want to do to Pokemon like Landorus, Great Tusk, Golden Go, Samurott, Pokemon around that, faster than Glamora, being able to Earthquake it. I think it has a great speed turn. I think that Multiscale will give it potential to sweep. I just think that it requires a lot more, right? Whereas regular Dragonite, just you throw on some heavy-duty boots and you're chilling. That's basically it. This Mon can afford to run Adamant if it wants to, and Adamant actually makes it faster, or stronger rather, than a regular Dragonite, which is kind of forced to run Jolly unless they're extreme speed. They're forced to run Jolly in the OU tier if they want to outspeed Pokemon like Dragapult, and if you run Jolly Dragonite, then you are obviously weaker. So this one does actually have a few base points more. Just because it can afford to run Adamant if it wants to, but I think Jolly is still best when it comes to it. I don't like Multiscale much. I think it would have been better with different ones. I think, again, the Inner Focus and the Multiscale is really cool for VGC. We've seen both of them being ran on VGC. Inner Focus to avoid Landorus and Incineroar's Intimidate, and then Multiscale because Dragonite can just get off some, and also fake out flinching, and then Multiscale because Dragonite can just, tank a hit if it really needs to. But I'm not the biggest fan of this on it. I still think it's leagues better than Mold Breaker on Emboar, but just, not what we expected. I still think it'd be good. Don't get me wrong, it's Dragonite. At the end of the day, it's Dragonite, and this is Super Dragonite, right? Look at all those beautiful stats. This is pseudo legendary Dragonite with Gen 9 stats, right? There's an OG coming back up. And I still think it'll be really good. But we did see things with Drizzle. We saw No Guard as well in the Legends ZAOU Pet mod, which was a version on Pokemon Showdown, which is what we're on right now, where you were able to use these Pokemon in a competitive setting. And we had Multiscale initially, and nobody used Mega Dragonite. It wasn't that great, but we'll see. You're also limited to a Dex in there. We'll see how it ends up doing in both singles and doubles. But please let me know your thoughts on that down below. Lastly, what I wanted to talk about was that these NFEs, Porygon 2, Electabuzz, and Magmar, are not going to be in Pokemon Champions at the start. They've come out and said that they're not having the not fully evolved Pokemon in it, which is a pretty big nerf when it comes to VGC. Porygon can work anywhere. Huge for VGC Trick Room, huge for OU Trick Room as well. But Electabuzz with Follow Me support and running Eviolite they're better than their evolutions. So this is a pretty big buff, or nerf, for VGC itself. And just Porygon 2 not being in the game, I think, is really sad when it comes to it. But on the flip side, they also showed Pikachu, so who knows if they actually stick to this. Then again, Pikachu is, of course, the mascot of Pokemon. But just kind of sad. I think these guys are some of the coolest ones, especially with the Flame Body and the Follow Me next to it. And Porygon being able to set up Trick Room, being able to also just be a nice little recover anti-Mega Salamence, or anti just anything, because it can trace back the Intimidate and do damage like that. Sad for that. But I think there's a lot more I can talk about when it comes to Pokemon Champions, but I'm waiting for a little bit more information. I'm kind of hoping or waiting to see if we get anything else before the official release, but I'm still very hyped. I think the changes are cool, and I'm excited about the Switch 2 update that they have for it coming out on the 8th as well. because I'm not trying to play no choppy game, right? I played SV when I first came out, and I enjoyed SV's story, but it would have been a lot better if I had played it on the Switch too, obviously. But let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.